Hey everyone, this is Robert Hiley with Freedom Team and EasyHouseInvesting.com. So what I thought I'd do is put a presentation together just explaining what we're doing in markets across the country and how real estate investors and passive private lenders are cashing in on today's market. The purpose of this case study is really to do some myth busting, explain why it's a predictable investment month in and month out, break down the numbers so you can understand them, and really reveal some jargon that's only particular to the real estate industry, reveal some discounted sources that most people will never know about, and also identify ways that investors are cashing in and a secret some are using without even buying the house. What you'd learn today is the numbers and what makes a good deal good. We're going to break down the numbers and show you a typical real estate transaction versus a wholesale transaction. That's something I'll explain a little bit more. And also a strategy that anyone can use to leverage the knowledge and efforts of my team. Successful investors who learn how to create a cash flow secured by cheap houses. Now, in a typical real estate transaction, you have the real estate agent, and she goes out and she typically looks for a pretty house. And you have the homeowner who, their dream is home ownership. And what confers that ownership is a document called the deed or the title deed. Now, what they do is they go out typically and they get a bank loan from a banker, and what they do is they sign a promissory note to pay back that loan. The banker then puts up the cash, and that is secured by what's called a deed of trust or mortgage lien. And that's basically it's a instrument that confers debt upon the property. So that property can't be sold or refinanced or loaned against without that debt being satisfied or that lien. So in an investor transaction, you have a similar relationship going on. What you have is you have the wholesaler, and the wholesaler goes out and he tries to find a house that is that has a situation. Usually it's physical depreciation. It needs some repairs, or there's a financial situation going on. You have an owner that really needs to sell quickly, and what that does is it creates a win-win-win situation for the seller, for the private lender to be involved, and also for the investor who's going to come along and buy that property. So what happens typically is the private lender will put up the money for the purchase of that property, and in return, they receive, just like the bank, a lien against that property. And what that does is it secures their money against the property. It allows the wholesaler to buy that property very quickly. And what happens is the wholesaler turns around, takes that property that they found, sells it at a significant discount to another investor, and that deed, that ownership, that document is now transferred to the investor. The investor pays the wholesaler for that property, and when the wholesaler gets paid, that money now comes back to the private lender. The money that they put up for that property comes back to the private lender with friends. So this is what creates the win-win situation for all three parties. The investor gets a deeply discounted property, the wholesaler gets paid, and the private lender gets an investment that brings them a predictable cash flow, brings them a predictable return on their money, and also secures their money against the real estate. Now, what that means is when the investor's getting their money back with friends, they want to do it over and over again. When the private lender is getting their money back with friends, they want to do it over and over again. So they want to deal with the wholesaler. And the secret that most don't know is that to buy cheap, what wholesalers do, and all wholesaling means is that a real estate investor goes out and he finds a property, he buys it at a significant discount, and then he turns around and sells it at a significant discount. So it's called wholesaling. So to buy cheap, successful investors pay cash in order to close fast. And the reason they do that is traditional banks are too slow. They're too cumbersome. They can take weeks, and sometimes often, as many have experienced, is that they throw a lot of monkey wrenches in the purchase of that property. So the speed at which a wholesaler can buy a property is one of the reasons they can acquire it at such a discount. So that's where private lenders or everyday people enter in. And as you saw in the previous graphic, that's where the private lender could be they could be a regular worker. They could be in this graphic you have a You have a policeman, you have a fireman, they could be a doctor or nurse. And these are typically people who maybe they don't know real estate, or they don't want to take the time to actually run a business like this to acquire the kind of cash flow you can get from real estate. And that's how they can step in and actually leverage the basically my team, leverage our knowledge, leverage our success, and turn what's traditionally a very active investment into a passive cash flow for them. What we'll go over next, real quickly, is some typical terms explained. So what you'll hear a lot of times is some jargon in real estate known as the after repair value. And what that basically means is, what is the property worth after it's repaired?
And there's another term called the AIV.
What is the as-is value? Okay, and then RC stands for repair costs. So we have the ARV, the after repair value, minus the repair costs equals the as-is value. So a lot of times when you see our deals put together, you'll see these terms, and also what makes it so juicy for the investor coming in, because there's a lot of meat left on the bone. The property's already at a significant discount, and we're taking into account any repairs that need to be done for the investor when they come in. So typically these deals sell very quickly. Sometimes it's in days. That's why there's a minimum return on investment. And sometimes it takes longer. It takes a couple months, but we'll go over that in just a second. So here's a typical case study. Property value of $105,000 after repair value. We acquired the property at $50,000. Other costs were about $1,500. And so that was a total purchase price of $51,500. We turned around and wholesaled this property to another investor for $60,000. That gave us a gross profit of $8,500, a minimum return to the private lender of $1,000, plus 10% interest at 4 weeks. That brought a total profit
of $1,429.17.
A 2.7% return in 1 month, or an annualized ROI of 32.4%. And the scary thing is you could do this month in over and over and over again. Now, how does that compare to the stock market, where you're dealing with option strategies that are like melting ice cubes, where if you don't have it, if you don't time it right, you lose it. And here's how this is predictable. Even if the market crashes, we know historically that the prices are still going to be relatively the same over 1 to 6 months. And if we're buying at 50 to 60 cents on the dollar, we have plenty of wiggle room. And the private lender's money is secured against the real estate. So here's how it works. We get an accepted offer from the seller to buy the property for $51,500, which is about 50 cents on the dollar. We borrow $51,500 from a private lender, and the private lender sends the money to a closing agent. It doesn't go to us. The closing agent records a lien on behalf of the private lender at closing. So basically the private lender is stepping in as the bank at this point. And who would want to be the bank, right? So the private lender's money is secured by the real estate. The $51,500 loan is secured by a house valued at, in this case, almost twice as much, $105,000. And the private lender is paid 5% to 10% interest every month for the use of the money, with a minimum interest payout of $1,000. So here's our advantage. We're buying at 50 to 60 cents on the dollar. We're getting off-market houses. We're not fighting people in the MLS. We're getting deals that are not available to the general public. And our off-market houses come from direct mail, tired landlords, vacant houses, evictions, properties with a situation where they have a physical problem or they have a financial problem. We get word of mouth referrals. Online advertising is where a lot of our deals come from, probate sellers. And what this creates is a relationship where other investors call to buy from us. This means that we know investors that are looking for relationships with private lenders nearly every day. So if this sounds like something that you'd like to know more about, this relationship between the real estate investor and the private lender, or you want to connect with our network of experienced investors and see some of the inventory and opportunities available, let me know. You can contact us at this phone number or this website. And hey, I hope this information was helpful to you and open your eyes to some new ways of creating cash flow. Thanks.